How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying daf. What daf are we studying? Peites? Why not? Did we get up to Peites? I don't know. Did we? Wait, what are we doing? Wait, what was it? Moscow? Yeah. We're up to Peites. Why not? Should we take a vote? Well, what daf you guys want to learn? Peites. Friends, welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying daf Peites, daf 89, Masechet Ksubis, friends. What can I tell you about daf Ksubis? Well, it's interesting. The mice, it's the interesting daf. The mice is an interesting daf. We talk about, We talk about what happens when, you only have like a get, you only have a ksuba, and what can you extrapolate from that? Interesting stuff, the mice. Alright, let's jump in. Okay, let's do it. Here we are. Daf Peiches Amud Beis, all the way at the bottom. Tell me when you're ready. Let's go. Hotzia get ve'ein ima ksuba. Givaldik. So, a woman whips out a divorce, a writ of divorce. I don't know if that makes sense, but a bill of divorce, a get. Now, they say, okay, so I see you're divorced. Are you, right, where's the ksuba? She says the dog ate it. So they say, okay, beseder, well, if you have a get, so I guess then memele, it means that you were married. So okay, now you're divorced. Go v'ksuba, so she can collect her ksubit. Okay, fine. Ksubit ve'enima get. If she shows up with a ksuba, but she doesn't have her get, he omers, she says, ovad giti. She says, I lost my get. I'm divorced, but I lost my get, and therefore I want to collect the payment of the ksuba. V'hu omer, and he says, avad shover. And he says, look, I had a receipt. I've already paid the get. And they say, okay, so where's your receipt that you paid it? And he says, I lost that. So she comes with her ksuba, and she says, I want to be paid my ksuba because we're divorced. They say, okay, where's your get? She says, I lost it. So I say, okay, fine. And he says, yeah, but I already paid the ksuba. I say, okay, so do you have a receipt that it was paid? He says, no, I lost that. And similarly, right? Friends, we just finished, we just concluded a year of Shemitah. At the end of the year of Shemitah, there's something that's called Shmitas Ksofim, which means that any loans are forgiven. Now, in order to, kind of like a workaround for that is what's called a pruzbul. Pruzbul essentially allows a lender to be able to collect his the money that he lent even after the Shemitah year. So similarly, Balchov, if you have a lender, Sheotzi Shtarchov, that comes to court after Shemitah with his loan document, right? Reuben's trying to collect his loan from Shimon. Ve'enimo pruzbul. So we say to Reuben, we say, okay, fine, but you realize that the loan is memela forgiven during Shemitah. Do you have a pruzbul? And he says, no, I don't, I lost it. In both of these cases, elu lo yi paru. In either case, they cannot be paid. So, in this case, when this woman has a ksuba but no get, she won't be paid for the ksuba. And when a fellow has a loan document but no pruzbul, he will not be repaid his loan. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, minasakone vo'elach. However, once there were sort of dangerous situations, Yishagova Ksubaso Shelo Beget. So once there were sort of like dangerous periods in our history where there were the rulers were trying to stamp out Yiddishkeit, and therefore it was risky to be to have a writ of divorce just lying around. So then they wouldn't keep him around. So then, in that case, right, or you didn't want to have a pruzbul lying around, any kind of religious sort of artifacts. So then, ishagova ksubasa shelo beget uvalchov gova shelo bepruzbul. So in those periods, a woman would be able to get paid to receive her ksuba payment without a get, and a fellow would be able to collect his loan after Shemitah even without a pruzbul, because we don't want these sort of religious documents lying around, and therefore they can, we would trust them that they had the get or they had the pruzbul and it got lost. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara, Shmamina kosvin shover. Oh. So clearly, right, from the fact that we're saying that if she shows up in court with a get, with a writ of divorce, and she says, I'm divorced, and we say, well, where's your ksuba? She says the ksuba is lost. So then the fact that we allow her to collect the ksuba must mean that memele, when the husband pays the ksuba, we write him a receipt, right? There's a machlokas, right? There's a machlokas about kosvin shover or not, right? Of course, the reason to argue against writing a receipt for a payment is because then it's upon the person who receives who pays the money to hold on to the receipt and make sure that no mice eat it or anything like that, and it's a headache, right? So I think we paskin that ain kosvin shover, that we don't write receipts and then make the payer hold on to the receipt in order to prove that he in fact paid it, because then it's a headache for him, right? Then it's a headache for him to hold on to the receipt. So, but we're saying over here that from the fact that this wife or ex-wife can show up in court with a get, and based on having the get without the ksubah, she's able to collect. So then that means that we must write that when the husband pays her, we're going to write a receipt and give it to him. The ein kosvin shover, because if we don't write a receipt, well, leichush dilma mafkala liksubasa vigabya ba. Because otherwise we have to be concerned that maybe she's going to whip out the ksuba in a different court and collect nochamo a second time. So meaning, if she, like, what would happen in the case where she comes to court with her get, and with this get, she's going to collect her ksuba. We say, hey, where's your ksuba? She says, I lost it. So we say, okay, fine, it's okay. And we allow her to collect her ksuba. But then what she can do is, she didn't actually lose her ksuba, she was lying. Her ksuba's at home. Now, after she gets paid with the get, after she gets paid for she gets paid her ksuba by showing the get, they tear up the get so that she can't collect with it anymore. But she still has her ksuba. And what does she do? Now, the Mishnah had said that if she shows up with a ksuba and no get, she cannot get payment. But you know what she does? She waits. She waits until the guy dies, until her ex-husband dies. Now, she doesn't have a get, because once she received the get, they tore it up. The Gemara in Amud Beis is going to say that, well, maybe she needs her get, whatever. But okay, for now we're saying that they tore it up. So she doesn't have a get. But she waits for the ex-husband to die. And then she goes back to a different court claiming, with her ksuba in hand, that she's a widow. That she was married. Her husband just died. Sad story. And here's her ksuba. She forgot about the fact that she was divorced. No, they were married. Here's my ksuba. My husband died. I want to collect my ksuba. So therefore, from the fact that the Mishnah says that we allow her to collect her get, we allow her to collect her ksuba payment by only showing the get without the ksuba, and we're not concerned that after receiving payment of the ksuba, she's going to wait for him to die and then come with her ksuba this time to a different court and get paid for the ksuba nachamo. The only reason why we're not concerned about that is because it must be that we write a receipt that once the husband pays the ksuba the first time, we write a receipt and give it to him, and then he keeps it with his papers, and his kid and his heirs can, if she tries to collect the ksuba nochamo, so then the heirs pull out the receipt and say, you're being dishonest. We know that you already paid one time before. So therefore, it must be that we write receipts. Okay. Amar Rab b'makom she'ein kosvin ksube askinan. So Rab says, you know what? Actually, we don't write receipts. Okay, so if you don't write receipts, then don't we have to be concerned that maybe she's going to show up in a different court after he dies with the ksubah? Well, says Rab, we're talking about a place where they don't write ksubas, where they just rely upon the Tanai Bezdin, Mana Masayim. And therefore, we're not concerned that she's going to show, so we don't write a receipt when he pays it, and we're not concerned that she's going to show up with the ksuba in a different court because we're talking about a town where they don't write Ksubis, so she's not, Mimele, she's not coming with her Ksuba to another court. Shmuel Omar, and Shmuel says, Ab b'makom shekosvin Ksube. Where Shmuel says that this would apply, that she could whip out her get without a Ksube. This would apply even in a place where they do write Ksubis. Shmuel kosvin shover? 1 second. So does that mean that according to Shmuel then, we write shovers? Right? If we're saying that even in a place where they write Ksubis, she can collect with the get alone, so then wouldn't that mean that Shmuel then is saying that we write the shover? Omar read a receipt so that to prevent her from collecting the Ksuba after he dies. So Omar of Onon says, of Onon ledidi mefarshli mini de Shmuel, that it was explained to me, Shmuel's opinion, like this. B'makom she'ein kosvin, that in a situation, right, in a place where in general they do not write Ksubis, V'omar kosavti, and he says, yeah, but I wrote a Ksuba, right? So says Shmuel that in a place where they don't write Ksubis, okay, so if they don't write Ksubis, then we're not concerned that she's gonna, take her Ksuba to some other court after he dies. But he says, V'omar kosavti, but he says, yeah, but here's the thing. I know that in general we don't write Ksubis here, but I did. And now I'm concerned that after I pay her Ksuba, she's going to take this Ksuba, that after I pay the Ksuba, right? I mean, I wrote her a Ksuba, even though the minig is that we don't write Ksubas, I did write a Ksuba, and now I'm concerned that after I pay her the Ksuba, she's going to wait till I die and then take the Ksuba and try to get paid Nachamo. So all of Law Viraya. Well, then he's going to have to bring witnesses that he in fact wrote a Ksuba, because the default in this place is that they don't write Ksubas. And therefore, our Mishnah, when it says that she can collect the Ksubah with the get alone, is because it's a place where we don't write Ksubas. And he said, yeah, but I wrote a Ksubah, and he wasn't able to bring witnesses, so therefore she's able to collect without with the get alone. And if it's a place where we generally write Ksubis, and therefore she shows up in court with her get alone, and we say, okay, but where's your Ksubah? Ve'amar lo kasavli, and she says, well, he didn't write me a Ksubah. So aleh lo haviraya. So then she would have to bring proof that in fact there was no Ksuba written, and only in that case would she be able to collect the Ksuba if she brings witnesses that in fact no Ksuba was written. So you could say that according to Shmuel, you do not write a shover, right? And it just depends, right? In a place where they don't write Ksubis, so then she would be able to collect it. And in a place where they do write Ksubis, it would be talking about a situation where she brings witnesses that for whatever reason they did not write a Ksubah. There are people outside yelling. Lemaisa, friends, let me tell you, Epis. Last night was a rough night in this neighborhood. A lot of noise. The neighbor was screaming and yelling. I noticed it too. I was woken up in the middle of the night. I don't know, people, I sleep with like a noise machine on because it's so noisy around here. And even with the noise machine, I was woken up in the middle of the night. And then I got up, I was learning Babylon Talmud, people in the park yelling and screaming. I was on my way to work this morning, and I say good morning to one of the other neighbors. And he says, yeah, there's a lot of noise. It's like, hey, how you doing? He's like, yeah, a lot of noise. Like the whole neighborhood, nobody slept a wink last night. Because the people in the park, they make a lot of noise at hours when probably there shouldn't be noise at all. We should move on. We should go weiter. So where were we again? So Laviraya. So Va'af Rab Hodar Bey. And so everybody in this neighborhood is very sleepy today, including me. I didn't sleep very much last night. But that's mostly because I just didn't sleep very much. But let's go weiter. Va'af Rab Hodar Bey. Oh, and Rav Oichit changes tune. Domer Rav. The Rav says, Bein b'makom she'kozvin, bein b'makom she'en kozvin. Right? Whereas Rav said earlier that Dafka we're talking about a place where we don't write Ksubis. But then Rav changed his tune and says, no, it can even be in a place where we do write Ksubis, but still there's no shover. get gova ikr, ksube gova tosefes. That when she comes with the get alone, well, that will be enough to enable her to collect the Mona Mosayim. When she comes with the ksube, then she can collect the tosefes. So therefore, there's no concern that, well, if she comes with the get now, then she'll collect the ksube later. The get collects a different thing than the ksube collects. The get collects the Mona Mosayim, the ksube allows her to collect the tosefes. If anybody wants to, try to disagree, says Rav, let them come and disagree. Tanan, we learn in our Mishnah. Ksube ve'in ima get. Okay, we said in our Mishnah that if she produces a ksube, but no get, he omeres ovad giti, she says, I lost the get. The cat ate it. V'hu omer, and he says, ovad shovri. And they say, okay, and he says, well, I paid it. And they say, okay, where's your receipt? So he says, well, I lost it. V'chein balchov shofshis shtarchov, and also a lender at the end of Shemitah, that he has a document claiming that he's owed money. Ve'in imo pruzbol, and he doesn't have a pruzbol. Hari elu lo yiparu, they cannot get paid back. Fine. Bishlam l'Shmuel. So I understand according to Shmuel, mukilab makom she'ein kosvin. So he'll say that the Mishnah is talking about in a place where we don't usually write a ksube. Right, so let's do that again. So b'shlam l'Shmuel. So I understand the Mishnah according to Shmuel. You have to understand it like this. Mukilab makom. People are yelling outside. Why are people yelling outside? Wait, seriously, why are they yelling? Don't they know I'm recording Babylon Talmud? Mukilab makom she'ein kosvin. So Shmuel would say like this. It's talking about a place where we don't write a ksube. V'omar kasavti. And he said, yeah, but I wrote a ksube. And now I'm concerned that she's going to collect with the ksube. Damina le aisi raye. And so we say, okay, so bring a proof that you wrote a ksube. Ve'ilo ma'isi raye, amina le zil proi. And if you don't bring a proof that you wrote a ksube, then you're going to have to pay, right? So it's talking about a situation. Where this wife showed up in court with her divorce document, with her get alone. And then, with her get alone. And they say, and it's a place where we don't write ksubis. And so they say, okay, there's your get, so you can collect the ksube. Now, he says, yeah, I know we don't write gets, or we don't write ksubas around here, but I did write a ksube, and I'm concerned that if I pay the ksube now, she's gonna take this ksube that I wrote for her, and after I die, she's gonna collect with it. Or maybe, I guess collect with it even, well, that's kind of the case here. So he's concerned that he wrote a ksube and she's going to try to collect, double dip and collect again. So they say, okay, well, we don't usually, so the Bezdin says to him, well, we don't usually write ksubas around here. So if you did write a ksube, bring witnesses that you wrote the ksube. And he's unable to find witnesses. He's unable to bring witnesses. So they say, okay, well, you're going to have to pay this. You're going to have to pay the ksube. She has a get. We don't write ksubas around here. You didn't bring witnesses that you wrote a ksube. So you're going to have to pay the value of the ksube. He says, fine, I'll pay it. But write me a receipt. So they write him a receipt. And now comes the next case in the Mishnah. Sure enough, she shows up in Bezdin with the ksube that he wrote her, that he wasn't able to find witnesses about, but he was telling the truth. And sure enough, she now shows up in Bezdin with the ksube with no get, because they tore up the get when they paid the first time. And then they say to her, well, where's your get? She says it's lost. They say to him, okay, where's the receipt that we wrote you? He says, oh, I lost that too. And we're saying that in this case, she cannot collect the ksube. So I understand according to Shmuel, there's a way for us to establish this case in the Mishnah about when she shows up with a ksube without a get. It's talking about that situation where it's a place where they don't write ksubas and they said bring witnesses and he didn't, whatever. But according to Rav, who says that the get collects the Mona Masayim and the Ksubah collects the Tosefes, Nihi de Iker lo Gabya, well, granted that without the get, she won't be able to collect the Mona Masayim, Tosefes Mia Tigabe, but according to Rav, shouldn't she, when she comes with the Ksubah, shouldn't she be able to at least collect the Tosefes? Why do we say that when she shows up with the Ksubah alone, she collects zilch, nada, nothing, null, nil, undefined? Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, here, what are we talking about? Kishe'ein sham ede gerishin. Well, here it's talking about where there weren't any witnesses about the divorce. Meaning she's showing up in Bezdin with a ksubeh, and no get, and there's no witnesses for the divorce, right? She'ein sham ede gerishin, there's no witnesses about the divorce. So migo diyachol lemeimo lo gerashtia. Well, since the husband can literally just say, right, in the absence of a get, in the absence of any witnesses that they're divorced, what can the husband say? We're still married. Why should I have to pay her anything? We're still married. She doesn't have a get. There's no witnesses. We're still married. I don't have to pay anything. So since he could have gotten out of it by simply saying that we're still married and I don't have to pay anything, so yachol lemeimar gerashtia. So therefore, we believe him to say, to admit that, yeah, sure, we did get divorced, but vinasati la ksubasa, and but I already gave her ksubah, and therefore she doesn't get paid when she shows up just with the ksubah. Hamidiktani seifa, but 1 second. We're saying that over here, this is talking about where there's no witnesses. But from the fact that it says in the Sefer, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Omer says Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, that min hasakone ve'elach, that from when things got dangerous, when it was a dangerous period in Jewish history, Ishagova ksubasa shlo beget, a woman can collect her ksuba without a get, uvalchov shlo bepruzbol, and a lender without a pruzbol. B'diika ede gerishin askinan. It must be talking about where there are witnesses. Diileka ede gerishin b'mai gabya. Because if there are no witnesses, then why would we allow her to collect her ksubeh without a get and without any witnesses? So memele, we are talking about where there are witnesses. So ela kula Reb Shimon Gamliel rather understand. You have to understand the Mishnah in the following way. It's all the opinion of Reb Shimon Gamliel, and this is how you read the Mishnah. Hare elu lo yiparu. Okay, so we say that if she shows up only with the ksubeh, so then she cannot be paid, right? And if the lender shows up without a pruzbol, can't be paid. When do we say that? Kishe'ein sham ede gerishin, when there are no witnesses about the gerishin. Aval yesh sham ede gerishin, but if there are witnesses that they got divorced, well then gabya tosefes. So then she will be able to, with the ksubah, she'll be able to collect the tosefes. The ikr, and when it comes to the ikr, imafka gita gabya vilo mafka gita lo gabya. And with regard to the Mana Masayim, if she has a get, she'll be able to collect the Mana Masayim. If she does not, then she won't be able to collect the Mana Masayim. And from the time that things got dangerous, even though she does not have a get, Gabyo, she would be able to nonetheless collect the Mana Masayim. Sheb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer misakona ve'elach ishagov ksubasha shlo beget uvalchov shlo bepuzbol. Because Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that from the time that things got dangerous in Jewish history, so then a woman is able to collect her ksubah without a get, with the Mana Masayim without the get, and a balchov without a pruzbol. So you can explain this Mishnah according to Rav, how the get is for the Mana Masayim and the ksubah is for the toe. Sefes. Says the Gemara, Amrele Rav Kahana v'Rav Asi l'Rav. So Rav Kahana and Rav Asi said to Rav L'Didach, according to you, the Omart, get go ve'ikr, that you need a get in order to collect the Mana Masayim. Well, if that's the case, Al-Mana min anisun b'mai gabya. Well, if you have a woman who's married and now she's a widow, she doesn't have a divorce document, they never got divorced. So all she has is a ksubah, and she wants to come and collect her ksubah. We're only going to give her the tosefes. What about the mana masayin? Be'edei misa. That, when the witnesses come and say that he's dead, so then she'll be able to collect it. V'leichush dilma gersha umafka legita v'gabya bey. But don't we have to be concerned that maybe like right before he died, he divorced her, and now she has a get and she's going to collect with it nachamo? Biyoshev tachas baila. Well, it's talking about where they know that she was not, right, they were living together, and therefore, of course, she was married. But v'domo samuch lemisa gersha. But maybe right before he died, he divorced her. So meaning, first we said, how do we know that they didn't get divorced and she's going to have a get that she's going to whip out in another place? So very nice that there's witnesses that he's dead, but how do you know that they weren't divorced? They say, well, they were living together, so they were clearly married. We say, but how do you know that right before he died, he didn't divorce her, and now she's going to whip out the get and collect again? We say, well, if literally right before he died, he divorced her, so then, yeah, it's a risk. Yeah, there is this risk. By divorcing her right before he dies, yeah, he's taking this risk of people not knowing that she got divorced, and then she might, try to collect the get nachamo. Okay, fine. So we explained according to somebody, right, a widow from marriage, right, that she'll be able to collect. But what about a widow from Erison? How do we know that they didn't get divorced and that she's gonna whip out the get, right, and collect nachamo, right, and try to collect again? Because after all, when they were engaged, they weren't living together. So therefore, there's not like we don't have necessarily anything to rely upon to say that, well, we know that they were married because they were living together. They weren't living together, they were engaged. How do you know that they didn't get divorced? Now she's going to whip out a get in some other place. So be'edei misa, we said, well, when he, you have the witnesses that he's dead. Yeah, but how do we know that maybe he didn't divorce her? And then after she receives the entire ksuba, the ikr and the tosefes, she's now going to whip out the get and collect nachamo. So the Gemara says, well, you know what? The truth is, in a situation where we have no choice, we'll write a receipt. This is a situation where we have no choice, right? Meaning, yeah, she's engaged, and right, she's engaged. So in a situation of engagement, so then we would have to, write a receipt that the ksuba has been paid, because otherwise, if she comes and whips out a get at some later point, we will have no way of knowing, if she was paid or not. And I'll prove it to you that when we don't have a choice, we write a receipt. Ede misa gufayu. Well, even the witnesses themselves about the death. How do you know that these witnesses who are testifying that the guy died and that she's now a widow and she can collect her ksuba, how do we know that they're not going to testify in one bezdin and then go to another bezdin and give the same testimony and collect nachamo? So certainly in places where we don't have a choice, so then we write a receipt. Right now, you might be thinking, but after she collects the ksuba, wouldn't they tear it up so that she can't collect nachamo? Well, it's in a place where they don't write ksubis, and therefore there's no ksubis to tear up. And maybe the witnesses are gonna testify in this court that he's dead, and they go to another court and testify, and she's gonna keep on collecting the ksuba. So therefore, clearly, in order to prevent situations like that, when we need to, we write a receipt. Omar le Mark Shishabre de Rav Chizda le Rav Ashi. Rav Chizda apparently had two sons. One was older, one was younger. So they called the older one Mark Shisha, and the younger one they called Mar Zeira or something? Mar Yenuka. Okay. So Mark Shisha bed Rav Chizda's son Mark Shisha, he asked Rav Ashi, Almoneh min ha'erisin. So we just assumed that an Almoneh from Erisin would collect her ksubah. Minolin di isla ksubah. How do we know that she has a ksubah? Ilei mameha. If you're going to say, well, from the following, Nis'armela o nisgarsha, that if she got widowed or divorced, bein min ha'erisin, bein min ha'nisuin, whether from the erisin or whether from the nisuin, gove es hakol, she collects everything. She collects everything. So Dilma the Kosavla. Right? So we want to know, how do we know that Almanim and Erisin would get paid the Ksuba even if it wasn't written, just by the Tanai Bezdin? Right? So we say, if it's because it says Nisarim lo Nizgar Shabim and Erisin ben Anisu and Goves Akol, Dilma the Kosavla, maybe that's Davka because he wrote down the Ksuba. Because he already wrote the Ksuba, then that is why she would collect. But what if he didn't write the Ksuba? How do we know that she would collect just because of Tanai Bezdin? And if you're going to say, well, if he wrote it, then what's the chiddush that she can collect it? Well, there is a chiddush, because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah would not agree with that. The Amar that he says that he only writes it for her he's writing the ksube and the tosefes and everything with the intention that he's going to marry her. If he's not going to marry her, then he's not planning to give her all this stuff. So therefore, we're saying that Beimina Erisin, Beimina Nisuin, she can collect everything. So it could be talking about where it's written down, Davka. And the reason why we're saying, so isn't that obvious that she can collect everything? It's not so obvious. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah wouldn't agree with that, because he would say that the whole point of writing it down was just that he can marry her, and they didn't get married because he died when Erisin. Dekanami, and it can also infer that it's Davka written. Dekatani Goves Akol. It says that she collects everything. The Iker, the Tosefes, Yom Pishtom the Kosavla. I understand if it's written, Mishumachi Goves Akol. That's what it means, that she collects everything. Because it's written down. What's written down? The Monim Asayim, the Tosefes. But if it's not written down and we're just relying upon the Tanai Bezdin, the Tanai Bezdin is only Monim Asayim. My Goves Akol, Monim Asayim, Uhudi Isla. Then what does it mean, Gove Esakol? If you're only relying upon the Tanai Bezdin is Mana Masayim. There's no Tosefes there. So if we're saying Gove Esakol, it must mean the Iker, the Tosefes. It must mean that we're talking about where it's written. Okay, so then how do I know that an Arusa would collect a Ksuba B'Tanai Bezdin, even if it's not written? The fact that Rav Chia bar Oven taught, Ishto Arusa, that if you have a fellow's engaged, lo onim v'lo mitamila. If he's a kohen, so he can even eat kachim on the day that his arusa dies. He does not become tamitor, right? He can't go to the cemetery, right? He's a kohen. Also, she doesn't do any practices of aninos, and also she cannot become tameh to him if they were only engaged. Now, right, that's whether she's a kohen, whether she's a bas Yisrael, right? A bas kohen is allowed to become tameh. The question is, right, so what are we talking about that she doesn't become tameh to him? So Rashi says on the Shalosh Regalim, where there's a mitzvah to be tahor. Meisa eno yorsha. Now, if she dies, he does not inherit her. Meishu, if he dies, gova ksubasa. So then, if he dies, then she collects her ksuba. But v'dilma the kosavla. But maybe that's also talking about where the ksuba was written, not just based on Tanai Bezdin. And if you're going to say that, well, if it's written, then what's the chiddush? Well, really, the point is that when he says that if she dies, he does not inherit her. So therefore, I may have thought, right? So therefore, we needed it to say that we needed it for Mesa Enu Yorshet, right? Meaning, yes, it's talking about where the ksuba is written. And if the ksuba is written and he dies, so then she would receive, right. Mesu Gova Ksuba, so she would receive the ksuba. But I might think that if he dies and the ksuba is written, and she would inherit, she would collect her ksuba if he dies. So I might then also think that if she dies, then he would inherit her. No. If she dies, he does not inherit her nonetheless. Okay? So Rav Nachman says to Rav Huna, Rav, according to Rav the Omar, that Rav says, get gova ikr, that the get collects the mana mosain, lechush de mafka gita by bedino vagabio vaja mafka bedino achvino. Don't we have to be concerned that she'll collect the get in one bezdin and then go and whip it out in another bezdin oichit and collect nachamol? And if you're going to say, well, after she collects the first time, we tear it up into smithereens. But she'll say, wait, you can't tear up my get. I need that. I needed to show people that I'm not married anymore. Right? She was married. She's no longer married. She's divorced. She wants to get remarried. People are going to say, wait, aren't you married? She says, no, here's my get. But if you tear it up, then she can't do that anymore. So, dikarina levikosvina nagabe. No, so what they do is they tear it up, but then they write on it, on the back of it. Gita dinan, regarding this get, karanoi, we tore it up, lav mishum digita poslu, not because it's an invalid get. No, it's a valid get and she's divorced. Elad lo tiader v'tigbe bezim nachrina, just to prevent her from being able to collect it again. Right? If she goes to collect it with it again, they'll say, hey, this get is torn in half. You can't collect with a get that's torn in half. But they add a note that says, but it is a valid get to the extent that it does indicate that she's divorced and she can get remarried. All right. I think there are people still making noise outside. Let's go weiter. Shnei gitin v'shnei ksubis go v'shtei ksubis. Okay, says the Mishnah that if you have 2 gets and 2 ksubas, right? So you have one get, right? You have a ksubah, and the ksubah has a certain date on it. And then you have a get with a later date on it, i.e., they got married and then they got divorced. Now there's another ksubah with a later date on it, and then another get with a later date on it. So you have basically a ksubah and then a get, and then a ksubah and then a get. Okay, so they got married, divorced, they wrote 2 separate ksubas. So Seder, she can collect both of those ksubas. Shtei ksubas v'get echad, but if there's 2 ksubas but only 1 get, o ksubah v'shnei gitin, or there's 1 ksubah and 2 gets, o ksuba v'get v'misa, or a ksuba and a get, and also the guy's gestorben, the guy's dead. Eina gove ela ksuba achas. She only collects 1 ksuba in all of those cases. That if you have right, so for example, in the case where there's 1 ksuba and 2 gets, so they got married, and there's a ksuba, then they got divorced, then they got remarried, then they got divorced again. But there's still that same ksuba because somebody gets married and then somebody gets divorced and then remarried. They use the same person. They use the same ksuba, and therefore she'll only be able to collect from that ksuba 1 time. Now, so we had said that if there are 2 ksubas and 1 get, so she only collects 1 of the ksubas. So what, does she just have a choice? She could choose whichever one she wants. Let's say this Mishnah then is a kasha of Nachman, Omer Shmuel, the Omer of Nachman, Omer Shmuel, Shnei shtaros hayotzim boze acharze, that if you have 2 documents, one with an earlier date, one with a later date, bitel sheni as sarishin, the one with the later date nullifies the one with the earlier date. Says the Gemara, Lavit Mar Allah, Omer Rav Papa, but one second, didn't Rav Papa say, Umoder Rav Nachman, that Rav Nachman nonetheless admits, the Osif Bei Dikla, the Tosefes Kosve, that if he even adds 1 palm tree, so then it's not disqualifying the first ksuba, it's adding on. Right? It's not disqualifying the first document, it's adding on to the first document. So, Al-Khanami here also, but the Osif is talking about where he added in the second ksuba. So, there are 2 ksubas. Right? The first ksuba says one thing, and then the second ksuba, there's something new in it. It's added. So it doesn't disqualify the first ksuba, it just adds on to the first ksuba, and therefore in that case, she has a choice. Either use the ksuba with the earlier date, but less things in it, which would allow you to at least collect from nechasim mishubadim from an earlier date, but you'll be able to collect less because the ksuba is worth less. Or you can collect the later ksuba with more stuff in it, but you would only be able to go as far back as that date, as the later date. So if land was sold prior to that, then, you can't, it's not meshubah to the document. So you have a choice, right? Either the earlier document that has less stuff in it, or the later document that has more stuff in it. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hotzia get viksuba vamisa. Okay, she comes with a get, and then a ksuba, and then the guy dies. Im get kodem l'ksube. So if the date on the get is earlier than the date on the ksube, well then go v'shtei ksubis. She can collect 2 ksubis, right? As we learned earlier, that if she shows up with just a get, she can collect the value of the ksuba. So with the get alone, she's collecting a ksuba, and then the next ksuba, the date written on it is later than the get, and then the guy's now dead, so she can also collect the ksuba from the second ksuba. Ksuba kodemis leget, but if the ksuba is prior to the get, so then it's basically just a ksuba and a get and misa, well, eina gova ela ksuba achas, then it's only 1 ksuba shemagarish es ishto ve'echzira almanas ksuba rishona echzira. Because if basically there's a ksube and then a get, and now the guy is dead, i.e. they got remarried in between, but there's only one ksube, so then it would be based on the first ksube, and she would only be able to collect one ksube. Ka'in she'isio, it says in New Mishnah, Ka'in she'isio aviv. If you have a ka'in, a young fellow, that his father married him off. Now, a father can't marry off his son who's a ka'in. Fine. So ksubasa kayemes, when this young fellow gets older and now he's an adult, so they can rely upon that same ksuba. The ksuba is a valid ksuba. Shamanasken kima. That's why he kept the ksuba. That it should be that they're going to rely upon the same ksuba. Gershin is gaire ishto imo. If you have a Gentile couple and they both convert to Judaism, Ksubasa kayemes, shamanasken kima, they can rely upon their original ksuba as well. They don't need to write a new ksuba. So this young fellow who becomes an adult, these Gentiles who become Jews, they can rely upon their original ksubas. Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, lo shanu ela mana mosayim. Says Rav Huna, when we say that we can rely upon the ksubas, that's only referring to the Tanai Bezdin, to the mana mosayim, but the actual documents are not actually valid documents that will be able to, collected Tosefes Ein Lo. You can't rely upon the Tosefes because that requires a valid ksuba. These weren't valid ksubas. They were written for a kain. They were written for a Gentile. They wouldn't be recognized. But the Mana Masayim, which is Tanai Bezdin, Seder. Rav Yehuda Amar Afilu Tosefes Yesh Lo. Rav Yehuda says no. You can even rely upon the Tosefes of these initial ksubas. Meisvei. We have a kasha against Rav Yehuda. Chidshu notelis masha chidshu. That we have a brayso that says, but if they add new things, so only then can they collect those new things. Right? So you have this young fellow, he becomes an adult, and they add something new, well then you can add that. Chidshu in lo, chidshu lo. That only if they added something new, they can add that, but otherwise it's only the mana masayim. Ema af masha chidshu. So Rav Yehuda would say, no, even what they added. So meaning, according to Rav Yehuda, they would collect the Iker and the Tosefes, and then if they have new stuff, they would add. They would be able to collect that as well. But don't we have the following brayso? Chidshu notelos masha chidshu, that if they added stuff, then they take what, then they can collect what they added. But lo chidshu, if they didn't add anything, besula gova masayim v'amana mana, then a besula would collect 200, and an amana would collect 100, but no more, no Tosefes. So like Rav Huna, not like Rav Yehuda. Tiyufta de Rav Yehuda. So we say in a chinami, Rav Yehuda masnisin at isay, that Rav Yehuda got confused with the Mishnah. Who suffered ksubasa kayemes akula milsakai? He thought that when it says that the ksuba that the ksuba is valid, he thought it meant the entire ksuba, including the tosefes. V'loi ikar ksuba kai. No, it's talking about the ikar ksuba, but not the tosefes. Hajan olach akosiv the ishto. So we just completed the parak akosiv the ishto. Ksubis is getting serious, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it started off, Ksubis was cool at the beginning, alright, but like as the Masechta progresses, it gets stark. But before you know it, Ksubis is almost over. I mean, we've got 3 weeks left in Masechta Ksubis, Friends, so what do we discuss today? There was some really interesting stuff, I think. Slow, we had to kind of churn through it, but right, we talked about different situations, right? We said that if a woman comes to court with only a get, she'd be able to collect her ksuba. If she comes with only a ksuba, then she would not be able to collect the ksuba. We talked, right? We mentioned the sugya of, do you write receipts for documents? We ultimately said no, we do not. Shmuel explained that we're talking about right that whether she can collect is based on if it's a place where we don't usually write a ksuba, so then she would be able to collect with just a get. If it's a place where we do write a ksuba, but she claims that there was no ksuba, so then she would have to bring witnesses that there was no ksuba, and then she would be able to collect with the get alone. Rav ultimately says that, well, the get would enable you to collect the ikr, whereas the ksuba would allow you to collect the tosefes. We then got to some other interesting mishnayos, right, about if you have a ksuba and then a get, and then a ksuba and then a get, you collect 2 ksubas. But if you have 2 ksubas and a get, or 2 gets and a ksuba, so you'd only collect 1 ksuba. And then we talked about
if you have a young fellow who becomes an adult, so can you rely upon that initial ksubah? And Rav Huna says only with regards to the Manet Masayim. Rav Yehuda had said even the Tosefes, but we asked Kashis on Rav Yehuda. Friends, that was the Pei Tes of Masechta Ksubis. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.